Hi everybody and welcome back to a new video on my channel. My name's Leora and I talk on here about books and writing sometimes as well. And today I'm doing another video on my favourite crime / mystery / murder mystery books. I've made one of these a really long time ago when I first just started my channel. That one is doing really well, which is sort of embarrassing because it's one of my first videos and it's definitely like not my favourite or best video I've ever made. But it is still doing really well, so I thought I'd update that one and make a new video with my favourite murder mystery thriller-esque book recommendations. There is a book for literally everybody in this pile because some of it's YA, some of it's adult fiction, I even have a graphic novel, I have some light-hearted ones that are more like on the cozy quirky side, and I have some books that are definitely more thrillers. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into the book recommendations. The first murder mystery-esque book I want to recommend is The Grimrose Girls by Leora. I've talked about this one before. It is a recent favourite book that I've really enjoyed. It's also dark academia. It's about these 4 friends who are at an elite boarding school. It's called the Grimrose Academy, and basically these 4 friends are very close. Ella, Yuki and Rory are left behind as their friend Ariana is killed. She was drowned in the lake and her death is ruled a suicide, but the girls all feel like maybe something else is going on, but they're not sure. And then a new girl arrives at the school called Nani Esses. Nani sort of comes into this friend group and like breaks everything up basically, and they were already sort of falling apart because of the death of their friend, but Nani sort of worsens everything. The dynamics between these characters are very interesting, and basically as they try to sort of retrace their last days leading up to Ariana's death to figure out what happened, they discover that her death was not the first death to happen on the school ground, and that there's basically like a sort of cycle of deaths happening over and over again, and that there's maybe something more sinister going on. And I really like this novel because it also has some magical elements woven into it, so there's some sort of dark, twisted fairy tale thing going on. So if you're looking for like a pure crime mystery novel, then this is maybe not for you because it's definitely more on the fantasy side of things, but it's definitely very suspenseful and it's a good book to pick up if you want like a little bit of both. And I really like the way that magic works in this book, to be honest, because it's all very sort of dark and like there's definitely some twisted things going on, but then there's also the suspense of the mystery and the murder and the murders that keep on happening in this book, because honestly it gets quite gruesome in this one, especially for a YA. There were some scenes where I was like that's horrible. There's also a lot of queer characters in this book, which is also really fun, so if you're looking for some LGBTQIA representation, this is also a good one. So yeah, I would highly recommend this novel. Then the next book I would like to recommend is Miss Don't Touch Me by Hubert and Carrasco, and this is basically a graphic novel, and I read the bound up volume, so it's like all of the different issues in one. This one is set in Paris in the 30s, which is a really nice scene for our story, and it's basically about the butcher of the dancers, which is a serial killer that sort of goes to these dances and picks up girls that have gone to the dances and murders them in a horrible way. And we follow Blanche, and Blanche and her sister Agatha work as maids, and they sometimes go to these dances, and basically one evening Blanche sees her sister being killed and she is sure that she was murdered and that the butcher of the dancers has something to do with it, but nobody believes her. Everybody thinks it's a suicide. It was also ruled as a suicide, and so Blanche decides to go out there on her own and do her own little investigation and figure out what happened to her dearest sister. From there we follow the story and we discover who was the butcher of the dancers. And there's also a lot of other like sort of side mysteries and little things happening. I think especially the setting was something that I really enjoyed about this book. There's loads of things going on the whole time and it's just Paris and historical, and the atmosphere is really good. So I really enjoyed this one. It wasn't like my favourite graphic novel that I've ever read, but it was definitely a read I would recommend. The art is also really cool. It definitely has this sort of rugged edge to it. It's like sort of rough around the edges sometimes, but in a really cool, purposeful way. I don't know how to explain it. I hope that helped. The next read I want to recommend comes hand in hand with today's sponsorship. Thank you so much to Blackstone Publishing for sponsoring my video and enabling me to keep creating content on here. Blackstone's purpose is to publish groundbreaking books, both fiction and non-fiction, and to create a long-term connection with the bookish community, librarians, booksellers, and all readers out there. I've recently read a historical mystery novel of theirs, Pignon, Scorbion, and the Barbershop Detectives, and I would love to recommend you guys this book in this video. So I listened to the audiobook, but I believe it's also available as a regular book. It's set in this sleepy small town in 1910s England, and we follow Pignon Scorbion, who's the new chief police inspector, and everybody in this town is kind of like, I don't know if we're up for this because he's a tad weird. So he walks into this barbershop to get his hair done and his nails, and everybody's like, who's that guy? What's he doing here? He's very sassy in a sort of strange way, but he used to be friends with the barber. So they strike up a conversation again, and basically all these strange and peculiar characters that hang around the barbershop start helping Pignon Scorbion solve the little mysteries that come along in this small town. And it's just so fun, and it's definitely one of those more quirky, sort of cozy mystery novels. Like there's a murder that they solve, but there's also this sort of more domestic dispute going on of a son who's trying to find his heritage. And there's lots of strange and weird characters that are very reminiscent of characters in Sherlock Holmes novels or Agatha Christie, but sometimes it also kind of reminded me of Wes Anderson movies because the characters are just like so strange and weird, which is very fun to read about. So nothing is super high stakes, but all the mysteries in this novel are definitely very intriguing. Like I did want to keep listening to figure out what was going on. One of my favorite things was also the settings. There's lots of cool historical settings. At one point they had this murder happen in a circus, and I love a good circus setting, especially if it's historical, so I really enjoyed that. So don't forget to check out Blackstone Publishing and their novel Pignon Scorbion and the Barbershop Detectives. It's a classic throwback whodunit, and it's definitely lots of fun, and you can order your copy through the link in my description if you're interested. So thanks again so much to Blackstone for sponsoring this video, and now let's get on with the rest of the recommendations. So the next book I would like to talk about is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I've read this one a couple of years ago, but I really enjoyed it. This is the story of a friend group of 30-somethings. They go out to this cabin in the woods on Christmas, I think. Yeah, it's Christmas break, and they used to be a really close-knit friend group back when they were students, but now they still hang out together, but they've grown apart a little bit here and there. Like there's definitely some breaks and like some tension in between these characters, and like the nostalgia of them when they were really close before is not enough anymore to keep them together now, because there's lots of resentment from things happening over the years. After New Year's, one of them ends up being dead, and they know that one of them had to commit the murder, like one of them had to have something to do with it. So it's a very scary sort of closed off of the rest of the world sort of murder mystery where you know that one of these characters has committed a crime, but you're not sure which one, and there's lots of like sort of intrigue and mystery, and you have no idea what's going on. I thought this one was so well written in terms of sort of character development and the way it all panned out in the end. Really well done. I really enjoyed it. I really need to pick up some of Lucy Foley's other novels. I think I own like 2 of them and I still haven't read either of them. I really want to try The Paris Apartment, but I haven't heard the best things about that one. Kind of hesitant to pick that one up, but I really want to know if it is good or not. And I also own The Guest List, which is I think a murder mystery about a wedding or something like that, so that's also very interesting. I need to get to that as well. Then another book I would like to recommend you guys is Rules for Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. I think this one has a different title based on whether you're in the UK or America, so if you're confused, it's probably because of that. This is not like my favorite book ever. I think I didn't give it that great of a rating, but I'm still including it in here because I think if you haven't read a lot of mystery, you should still pick this up because you might still really like it, because like the concept of this book is so intriguing. I would still recommend it to you. This is about a string of unsolved murders, and at one point a detective realizes that all of these murders are sort of parallel to classic murders that have happened in fiction. So he's like, oh my god, I can tie each of these murders to different books. So definitely bear in mind, if you haven't read some of these books, you might get spoiled. So Agatha Christie's The ABC Murders, Patricia Highsmith's Strangers on a Train, and Donna Tartt's The Secret History. So if you don't want to be spoiled for any of these, don't pick this up just yet because you will get spoiled. So basically there's this bookshop owner who has a small bookstore in Boston, I think. He has written an online article that he's published to his website that is called My 8 Favorite Murders. And it's basically the murders of the fiction, and then somebody is now committing crimes and killing people based off of that list. So such a good concept, very interesting. I felt the execution wasn't the best I've ever read, but because the concept is so interesting, it's still a fun novel and I still enjoyed my time with it, so I would recommend it. Another crime book I would never want to pass up is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This one is especially really good as an audiobook because a podcast is a big part of this story, and the audiobook just feels like you're listening to a true crime podcast. So if you like true crime podcasts, this is also a great recommendation for you. In this story, we follow Sadie, who's a teenager who's had a really difficult life. She was abandoned and she's trying to raise her younger sister on her own. But then at one point, her younger sister gets murdered in a really gruesome way. and Sadie is sort of left to deal with all the trauma and the horrible things, and it's just like really difficult for her. Her world is like crumbling around her, and then the police investigation is somewhat botched and it doesn't go very well. And then after that, Sadie is so upset and she basically runs off, deciding to find the killer herself and solve this mystery. So you're listening to that story, but then you're also hearing the story of Wes McCrae, who's making a podcast about Matty is the sister of Sadie, Matty's murder and then Sadie's disappearance following the murder, because Sadie is still missing and nobody knows where she went. So it's sort of the podcast and then the mystery on the other hand, and it was really, really good. I love this one, especially the audiobook. So good, so intriguing. I never saw it coming the way it all worked out, and it was really good. So I really enjoyed this one. Another crime book I would love to recommend to you guys is The Cutting Season by Etika Locke. In this story, we follow Karen, and she's the manager of a historic plantation house in Louisiana. And it used to be a plantation, so there's lots of history, and it's definitely a dark part of the history, and they give tours there now and stuff like that. And she's walking around the property like she does every day because she's the manager, and then she sees like a weird thing near a fence, and it turns out that a body is there and somebody was murdered. And in this book, sort of the history of that place combined with sort of racism and modern day issues that still are a thing in our world, it is so interesting the way it was all weaved together, like the way the past and the present and the way we view the past and treat the past in our present was sort of criticized within this novel. It was brilliant. It was so well done. Beneath all of those themes is also a murder mystery at its heart, so it's still also very intriguing and interesting, but at the same time you're learning a lot about our society and criticisms that Etika Locke has of that society. And it says in the summary, a magnificent sweeping story of the South, The Cutting Season brings history face to face with modern America, where Obama is president. Well, he was when this book came out, I think. But some things will never change. Etika Locke once again provides an unblinking commentary on politics, race, the law, family and love, all within a thriller every bit as gripping and tragic as her first novel. That's basically what I was trying to say. So I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really, really good. It was definitely a difficult read at times because of the serious themes, but it was just so well done. And then last but definitely not least, I want to talk about Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. This book is one that's also been on my channel for a while. Like I've talked about this read before, but it's just a read that stayed with me for a long time because it was so wild. So it's basically about this nanny who was convicted of murdering the child she was supposed to care for. And she's writing to this lawyer from prison saying, I didn't do it and I'm going to tell you exactly why and how I didn't do it. So you're reading her letters to the lawyer from prison. So she's already been convicted. And she basically went to nanny this rich family in this old Victorian house, but it was like a smart house. So it's really weird. It's like an old house, but it's modernized. So it's got like a sort of robot voice and like cameras everywhere and like a smart fridge and I don't know, all sorts of stuff. So the house is going a little bit crazy. So she's staying in the house, caring for the children, but the house is going a bit crazy. There's lots of other mysteries in there as well. Like nothing is what it seems. There's this rugged, handsome handyman around that is also a bit weird and we don't trust him. And yeah, lots of things going wrong. One of the younger children is also seeing ghosts, I think. It's all very, very scary, and just the combination of the smart house with like sort of, you know, somebody's gonna get murdered at the end, but then also the sort of more historical Victorian era setting. It's all so weird, but so good. So it's set in the modern day, by the way, but it's just an old house. So yeah, a very strange book, but a good thriller, and I really enjoyed this one as well. So those were some of my recent favorite thrillers and murder mystery novels. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and these recommendations have helped you out a little bit. Don't forget to check out Blackstone Publishing, and thanks so much again to them for sponsoring this video. And yeah, I'll see all of you in my next one. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys!